People often think that strong people are loud. They believe strength is shown by shouting, arguing, or always proving a point. But real strength is usually quiet. This is the story of Ethan. Ethan was not famous. He was not rich. He did not speak much. But there was something different about him. At work, people noticed that Ethan rarely reacted emotionally. When others complained, he listened. When someone insulted him, he stayed calm. When a problem appeared, he didn't panic. Some coworkers thought he was weak. He never defends himself, they whispered. He's too quiet, others said. He lets people walk over him. Ethan heard these words, but he said nothing. Every morning, Ethan woke up early. He made his bed, drank water, and sat quietly for 10 minutes. No phone, no noise, just silence. That silence was not empty. It helped him understand his thoughts. Ethan believed something simple. Not every battle deserves your energy. One day, during a meeting, a coworker named Ryan publicly blamed Ethan for a mistake. Everyone looked at Ethan, waiting for his reaction. Ryan's voice was loud. The room felt tense. Ethan felt anger rising inside him, but he didn't speak. Instead, he took a deep breath. He looked at Ryan calmly and said, "Let's review the facts." His voice was quiet, but clear. The manager checked the data. The mistake was not Ethan's. Silence filled the room again. Ryan looked embarrassed. Others avoided eye contact. That moment changed how people saw Ethan. Not because he shouted, not because he attacked, but because he stayed calm when others lost control. That night, Ethan wrote in his notebook, "Silence gives me time. Time gives me control. Control gives me power." This was only the beginning, because staying silent is not about fear. It is about self-respect. And in the next part, Ethan will face a situation where silence becomes even harder and even more powerful. After that meeting, people started watching Ethan more closely. Some respected him. Some felt uncomfortable. Silence makes many people nervous. Ryan avoided Ethan for days. Others suddenly became polite. But a few coworkers tried a different approach. They tested him. During lunch breaks, jokes were made. Small comments. Hidden insults. Ethan noticed everything, but he still said nothing. Inside, however, things were not always calm. Silence does not mean you feel nothing. It means you choose what to do with your feelings. One afternoon, Ethan received a message from his manager. "Can you come to my office?" Ethan walked in quietly. The manager looked serious. "Some people say you are too passive. They think you don't speak enough." Ethan nodded. "I understand," he replied. The manager leaned forward. "Are you okay with that? Do you have ideas? Opinions?" Ethan paused for a moment. "Yes," he said calmly. I just speak when it matters." The manager studied him. "That's rare," he said. "Most people talk too much." Ethan smiled slightly. That evening, on his way home, Ethan thought deeply. Am I avoiding conflict or mastering myself? Am I calm or just afraid? These questions were important. True silence is not hiding. True silence is control. At home, Ethan opened his notebook again. He wrote, "Silence is not the absence of courage. It is the presence of awareness." He remembered his past. Years ago, Ethan was not like this. He used to react fast, argue, defend his ego, and it cost him friendships, peace, and respect. Learning silence was painful. It felt unnatural at first. Biting your tongue, holding your breath, letting moments pass. But over time, he noticed something powerful. People who talk too much reveal their weakness. People who stay calm reveal their strength. The next test came sooner than expected. At work, a big project was announced. Promotions were possible. Competition became intense. Egos grew louder. Voices became sharper. Ethan stayed quiet. But silence alone was not enough anymore. Soon, he would have to choose. Stay silent or speak with purpose. And that choice would define everything. The office changed after the new project was announced. Everyone wanted attention. Everyone wanted to be seen. Meetings became louder. People interrupted each other. Some spoke without thinking, just to sound important. Ethan watched quietly. He listened more than he spoke. While others focused on being noticed, Ethan focused on understanding the problem. At night, while others relaxed, Ethan studied the project details. He planned carefully. He didn't rush. Silence gave him space to think. One day, during a team discussion, the manager asked, "Does anyone have a clear solution?" The room went quiet. People looked at each other. No one wanted to be wrong. Ethan slowly raised his hand. This surprised everyone. He spoke calmly and clearly. No long speech. No emotion. He explained the problem, then the solution, step by step. When he finished, the room stayed silent again. But this silence was different. It was respect. The manager nodded. That's exactly what we need. Some co-workers felt uncomfortable. Others felt inspired. Ryan looked down. That day, Ethan learned something important. Silence gives your words weight. When you speak less, people listen more. Later, Ryan approached him. "Why don't you talk more?" Ryan asked. "You could dominate every meeting." Ethan smiled softly. "I don't need to dominate," he said. "I need to be effective." Ryan didn't reply. That evening, Ethan walked home slowly. The city was noisy, but his mind was calm. He realized that silence is not about hiding your voice. It is about choosing the right moment. Many people speak to protect their ego. Strong people speak to create results. Ethan wrote in his notebook, "Silence sharpens my mind. When I speak, it matters." But challenges were not over, because silence attracts attention. And soon, someone would try to break his calm, not with words, but with pressure. Success always brings pressure. After Ethan's clear solution in the meeting, expectations changed. The manager gave him more responsibility. Deadlines became tighter. Eyes were always on him. Some people respected him more. Others felt threatened. Silence, when combined with competence, makes insecure people uncomfortable. Ryan started acting differently. His comments were sharper. His tone was cold. One afternoon, during a team review, Ryan said loudly, "Ethan looks calm, but does he really care? He never shows emotion." The room went quiet. Everyone waited. This time, the pressure was heavier. Ethan felt his heartbeat rise. His mind filled with answers, explanations, defenses. He could speak. He could win the argument. But he paused. Silence again. Then he said calmly, "I care enough to stay focused. Nothing more. No anger. No explanation." The manager nodded and moved on. Ryan had nothing else to say. Later that day, a coworker whispered to Ethan, "I don't know how you stay so calm." "I would have exploded." Ethan replied softly, "I used to. It never helped." That night, Ethan felt tired. Not physically, mentally. Silence requires energy. Self-control is work. He sat alone at home, lights dim, phone turned off. For a moment, he questioned himself. Is silence always the answer? Am I holding too much inside? He breathed slowly. Then he remembered something important. Silence is not about swallowing emotions. It is about processing them. Ethan opened his notebook. He didn't write sentences this time. Only 3 words. Observe. Decide. Act. He realized that strong people don't react immediately. They observe first. They decide calmly. Then they act with intention. The pressure didn't disappear. But Ethan was changing. He was no longer just quiet. He was grounded. And soon, a situation outside work would test his silence in a much more personal way, where emotions are harder to control and words can destroy relationships. Work was not the hardest place to stay calm. Home was. That evening, Ethan met his older brother, Lucas. They hadn't spoken properly in months. Their relationship was full of old arguments and unspoken tension. They sat across from each other at a small table. Lucas broke the silence first. "You've changed," he said. "You're distant. You don't talk like before." Ethan listened. "You think you're better than everyone now?" Lucas continued. "Always calm. Always quiet." The words were sharp. Ethan felt something heavy in his chest. Family words hurt more than office insults. For a moment, he wanted to defend himself, explain, fight back, but he stayed silent. Lucas laughed bitterly. "See? You never answer. That silence is annoying." Ethan finally spoke. "I'm not silent because I don't care," he said calmly. "I'm silent because I don't want to hurt you with words I might regret." Lucas froze. He didn't expect that. The room felt different now. After a few seconds, Lucas sighed. "I'm just angry," he admitted. "Life didn't go the way I planned." Ethan nodded. "I know that feeling." They sat quietly again. But this silence was not painful. It was healing. That night, Ethan realized something deeper. Silence can protect relationships. Words spoken in emotion can destroy them forever. Not every truth needs to be shouted. Not every feeling needs immediate expression. Some emotions need time. At home, Ethan wrote in his notebook again. Silence is kindness. When words would become weapons. He understood now that silence is not avoidance. It is responsibility. But the world doesn't always respect calm people. Soon, Ethan would face someone who believed silence meant weakness, and who would push harder than anyone before. That test would decide whether silence truly made him strong, or whether he would finally break it. A week later, the real test arrived. The company announced that one person would be promoted to lead the new project. Everyone knew two names were being considered, Ethan and Ryan. Tension filled the office. Ryan became louder than ever. He spoke in every meeting, interrupted others, and made sure his presence was felt. Ethan noticed, but stayed focused. One afternoon, Ryan confronted him directly. "Why don't you fight for yourself?" Ryan said with a smile that wasn't friendly. "Do you really think silence will get you promoted?" Several co-workers were nearby. They listened quietly. Ethan felt the pressure again. This time, silence was dangerous. Or at least, it looked that way. He paused. Then he said calmly, "I fight with my work, not my voice." Ryan laughed. "That's weak." Ethan didn't reply. The next days were stressful. Deadlines, reviews, presentations. Ethan prepared carefully. He didn't rush. He didn't complain. On presentation day, Ryan spoke first. He was confident, loud, and emotional. He promised big results, but skipped details. It was Ethan's turn. He spoke slowly, clearly. He explained risks, solution, steps. No drama, no ego, just clarity. When he finished, the room stayed silent. The manager looked thoughtful. 2 days later, Ethan was called into the office. "You got the role," the manager said. Ethan didn't smile immediately. "Why?" he asked. The manager replied, "You don't react. You think. You listen. That's leadership." Ethan walked out quietly. Ryan avoided him completely. That evening, Ethan sat alone, feeling something new. Not pride, not revenge. Peace. He understood now. Silence doesn't make you invisible. It makes your actions visible. But this promotion would bring a new challenge, leadership. And leadership would test his silence in a different way. Because when others depend on you, staying silent is harder than ever. Leadership changed everything. Now people came to Ethan with problems, questions, and stress. Everyone wanted quick answers. Some expected him to be loud, to give long speeches, to control every detail. But Ethan led differently. He listened first. When someone complained, he didn't interrupt. When someone made a mistake, he didn't shout. When conflict appeared, he stayed calm. At first, this confused the team. One coworker asked him, "Why don't you get angry when things go wrong?" Ethan replied, "Anger doesn't fix problems. Understanding does." Slowly, the team changed. People felt safer speaking honestly. Mistakes were discussed, not hidden. Stress decreased. Silence became part of the culture. During meetings, Ethan allowed pauses. No rushing, no pressure. Those pauses created better ideas. One day, a young team member made a serious mistake. The team expected Ethan to react strongly. Ethan looked at the data quietly. Then he said, "Let's learn from this. No blam, no sham." That moment built loyalty. Later, the same team member said, "I work harder because I don't fear you." Ethan understood something powerful. Fear creates obedience. Respect creates commitment. At night, Ethan reflected on his journey. Silence had changed him, but it also changed others. He wrote in his notebook, "Strong leaders speak less and listen more." But leadership brings responsibility. Soon, Ethan would face a situation where silence could be misunderstood, where speaking up would be necessary, even uncomfortable. True strength is knowing when to stay silent and when to speak, and that decision was coming. Ethan believed in silence, but he never believed in silence at all costs. One morning, the team received new instructions from upper management. The plan looked good on paper, but Ethan saw a problem immediately. The timeline was unrealistic. The pressure would burn the team out. During the meeting, managers spoke confidently. They expected agreement. The room was quiet. Everyone looked at Ethan. This time, silence was not wisdom. It was risk. Ethan took a breath and spoke. "I respect the goal," he said calmly, "but the timeline will cause mistakes. We need to adjust it." The room stiffened. One manager frowned. "Are you saying we are wrong?" Ethan didn't raise his voice. "I'm saying we can be better," he replied. Silence followed. Not the calm kind. The tense kind. After the meeting, some teammates whispered nervously. "You were brave," one said. "You could get in trouble." Ethan nodded. "Maybe." That evening, doubt appeared. Did I speak too much? Should I have stayed silent? The next day, Ethan was called into a private meeting. The senior manager looked serious. But then he smiled. "You were right," he said. "We reviewed the data. Thank you for speaking up." Ethan felt relief, but also clarity. Silence is powerful, but silence without courage is just fear. True strength is balance, knowing when to stay quiet and when to protect what matters. That night, Ethan wrote, "Silence is strength, only when guided by purpose." He was no longer just a quiet man. He was a man in control. And soon, someone from his past would return, someone who knew him before this growth, and challenge everything he had built. The message came late at night. A name Ethan had not seen in years. Daniel. They grew up together. Same school. Same dreams. But very different paths. Daniel was loud, confident, always talking. Ethan was quiet, watching, learning. The message was short. "I heard you're doing well. Let's meet." They met at a cafe. Daniel arrived first, speaking loudly on the phone. When he saw Ethan, he smiled wide. Still quiet, Daniel joked, "Some things never change." Ethan smiled politely and said nothing. Daniel talked about his business, his risks, his failures hidden behind jokes. Then Daniel leaned forward. He said, "Being silent all the time, it makes people forget you." The words were sharp. Old Ethan would have felt small, but not now. Ethan looked at Daniel calmly. "I'm not silent because I'm afraid," he said. "I'm silent because I choose my moments." Daniel laughed. "And this is your moment?" Ethan nodded. "I've learned that noise doesn't mean power," he continued. "Control does." For the first time, Daniel stopped talking. The cafe felt quiet, but the silence was heavy and strong. Daniel looked down at his cup. "I talk too much when I'm scared," he admitted softly. Ethan said nothing. He didn't need to. That night, Ethan understood something important. Silence is not about winning arguments. It's about understanding yourself. Some people talk to be seen. Some stay quiet because they see clearly. Ethan walked home feeling complete. He didn't need to explain himself anymore. The world was loud enough. And tomorrow, he would face his biggest test. Not with others, but with himself. The morning was quiet. No phone notifications. No noise. Just Ethan and his thoughts. In the past, silence made him uncomfortable. Now it felt like home. He sat by the window, watching the city wake up. People rushed. Cars honked. Voices competed. Ethan stayed still. For years, he believed strength was loud. He thought strong people always spoke first, argued more, showed power. But life taught him differently. Strength was waking up calm. Strength was not reacting to every word. Strength was choosing peace over pride. Later that day, a meeting was held at work. Tension filled the room. Different opinions. Raised voices. Everyone expected Ethan to stay silent. And he did. He listened carefully. Then, when the room became quiet, Ethan spoke. Just a few sentences. Clear, calm, direct. No anger, no ego. The room changed. People nodded. The argument stopped. That moment proved everything. Silence does not mean absence. It means presence with control. After the meeting, someone said, "You don't speak much, but when you do, people listen." Ethan smiled. That evening, he walked alone again. But this time, he wasn't carrying pain. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He had learned the final lesson. Strong people don't need to explain themselves. They don't chase attention. They don't fear misunderstanding. They trust their path. Silence became Ethan's armor. Calm became his weapon. Self-respect became his identity. And from that day on, no noise could shake him. Because the strongest voice he followed was the one inside him,